merci pour votre patience. Il est finalement là, il est juste là-bas. Donc, mesdames et messieurs, welcome to the stage, Kevin Eastman! Désolé si vous parlez pas anglais. I'm sorry if you don't speak English, but it's going to be done in English, right, Kevin?
Sure. I can't speak French, I'm sorry.
You can't speak French? Un petit peu?
No.
No.
Terrible.
Can you keep the mic as close as it? Yeah.
Close, yes, there we go.
We've got some weird tech. So Kevin, thank you so much for coming here.
Yes, thank you.
I would like to share the fact that I did grow up watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I remember, like, for example, coming home from school and then hearing the theme tune, and I'd be straight to that TV, tartine au Nutella, you know, so sandwich with Nutella, and I would just watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. En français, it's just Tortue Ninja.
Tortue Ninja.
Tortue Ninja. Ils sont pas mutants and ils sont pas teenagers. They're just Ninja Turtles. So I suppose what I'd like to say is thank you on behalf of me and all of us for creating something that is ingrained in us. It's like part of our psychology, in a way.
Well, you know, first, the only way that I got to come here to Paris to hang out with all you fans is because I have the most amazing fans in the world. I have the best job because I have the best fans. It is now, the Turtles are now 40 years old. 40. You believe it? They're no longer teenagers.
Wait, so 40 years old, so you started creating it when you were 5 years old?
That's very kind.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was 21. Peter and I were very young, and we had a big dream to draw comic books. I was a big fan of Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee as a silly animal, slow-moving turtle, fast-moving martial artist. That was the joke that started it all. And from that, we kept drawing and building the universe and building the turtles, and then we found all of you fans.
And so obviously the joke was that they're slow, and that was but did you consider other animals? Like snails are pretty slow, sloths. Had you considered other animals, or did you just immediately knew it was turtles?
It was immediately turtles, and I grew up in the country, and my grandmother lived on a lake that was full of turtles, and I loved them. They were like miniature dinosaurs to me. They were fantastic. So no other animal but turtles.
And so obviously we've got turtles, and then forgive me, I actually forgot the names, but their master is a rat.
It's a rat, yes.
Okay. Any particular reason other than he lives in a sewer?
That was it. It's like, you know, New York City, even though I've never been there, all you would hear about New York City was pizza and rats.
Have you seen that video that went viral? Il y a une vidéo qui est sur internet of a rat climbing up the stairs with a slice of pizza.
I love that.
I'm assuming a lot of people sent you that.
Yes, they did, and I loved each time they did. It was very funny.
Now, forgive me if I ask you questions that you've been asked probably hundreds of times.
Never gets old, honestly.
Good. Firstly, what's your favorite pizza topping?
Some people might,
Hawaiian.
Hawaiian.
It's Hawaiian, yeah.
Well, it's like, I like Hawaiian, but you put jalapenos on it. So
nice.
ham, pineapple, jalapeno. So you got salty, sweet, and spicy.
I've never done the spicy. I actually am a fan of Hawaiian people. So my dad, when I grew up, we couldn't even really afford pizzas. So we would have a slice of toast, and then a slice of pineapple, and then melted ham and cheese on top of it. It was called Hawaiian toast.
We had my mother would take English muffins, like a muffin, and spaghetti sauce, and put a slice of cheese on it. That was our pizza growing up.
Wow, that's quite innovative.
Yes.
So obviously your idea grew out of something that you trusted. Intrinsically you trusted that this made sense for you. But how did you, in the face of adversity, right, when you weren't too sure, when you had those moments of doubts, how did you find the strength to continue, like, no, we need to do this as a cartoon, as a comic?
Well, you know, wanted to sound like I'm pandering, but it really was. When we did the first issue, it was done as one story, beginning, middle, and end, because we never thought we'd have an opportunity to do a second one. But it was the fans that started buying that first issue, and they would write letters and say, "When are you going to do the next issue?" And we were like, we hadn't thought of that, hoping, but hadn't thought of it. So we drew the second issue, and it sold a little more. You guys bought the second issue, then we continued doing it because it was now paying our rent, so we could eat, we could draw full time, and that was.
So the first issue was only passion. It wasn't necessarily a goal. Donc la première édition du magazine, en fait, c'était venu d'une passion, mais il savait pas que ça allait devenir quelque chose de grand, quoi. Il l'avait fait juste pour l'amour. You just did it for the love of creating.
Yes, in fact, we borrowed money from my uncle to have enough money to print the first issue. So he had faith in us as well. We had no money; it was all in faith, and so we were just hoping.
That always helps when there's other people that sort of have faith in you, especially when the ideas are quite mad. Because sometimes I look back and I still don't quite understand. The Nemesis is a giant with a brain man in his stomach. Can you please explain it to me? I'm sure that there's fans that know exactly what he is. I have yet to understand. I'm 37. I don't know what he is. C'est quoi le mec, le géant là avec un cerveau dans le ventre? No, I know his name, but what the fuck is he?
Well, yeah, I have to say, I just saw Shredder walking by over there.
Oh, yes.
But Shredder, before you get to Krang, I get to Krang. But Shredder was the original bad guy in issue 1. And he was trained by doing dishes. I was literally drying a cheese grater. Peter and I were talking about the first issue. You know, the cheese grater.
Yeah.
So I said, wouldn't it be crazy to have a bad guy that could literally shred your skin off and have a cheese grater on his arm?
So inspiration just came from doing chores.
Doing chores.
I mean, if there's a moral to this story, is if you clean up, you might discover some really good creativity.
That's where the origin of Shredder came from. So.
No, sorry. Please continue.
Oh no, and Krang was just it was just a really stupid idea. Like you had these little aliens that lived in someone's stomach that were hiding on planet Earth, and that was the way we did it in the original comic. And then the cartoon they made him the one main bad.
Because
I love Krang. He's so funny.
That's something I remember was watching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. No worries. A giant rat. I was like, yeah, I'm on board. Fighting a shredder. Yeah, no worries. And then when he came along, I was like, what is this? I couldn't believe it. It was great. Have you played the Super Nintendo game, the OG SNES?
I've never beaten it. Never. It's like the original first game was so challenging, so difficult. I never made it through the water level.
I don't think I completed it either.
And then but I was so happy when they finally came out with the arcade game, because then you could play with a bunch of your friends. So, and that I could beat.
Because obviously, as soon as you created Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it has become your universe, right? You're essentially its god and protector, and you have to keep maintaining it, keep doing the dishes. If, for some reason, you hadn't had that spark, that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles spark, what do you think you would be doing as creator?
I would, no matter what, I would still be drawing comic books. There was no doubt. When the first comic books I saw when I was very young, I was crazy obsessed with them. That's all I did. I drew on the floor and the walls and everything. It was just comics. I think my parents thought I was crazy. Like I'm gonna never move out of the basement. One of those kids that lives under the basement.
Yeah.
But no, even.
Mom, I need more cookies. Food.
Cheesy puffs. Cheesy puffs.
Cheesy puffs. Oh,
cheesy puffs.
Yeah, cheesy puffs.
Make my cheesy puffs, Mom. No, but no matter what, I would draw comic books. I love them so much. I loved just it was such a wonderful way to tell stories of all kinds, past, present, future. And even when I was young and I discovered through Heavy Metal magazine European comics, it was even more mind-blowing because most American comics were written for very young kids. And as I was kind of growing out of them, I discovered Mobius and Belial and Jodorowsky and Manara and just all these fantastic artists and writers telling stories for adults. And that was it. I was done. I was never going to do anything else. If I was homeless, I'd be drawing comic books on my shopping cart.
Yeah, I think any artist understands that it comes out of us. I spoke about this with the actors that I interviewed previous to you. We were talking about a state of flow and how sometimes when we are in our creative endeavors, it almost feels like the art is moving through you. So I'm guessing, can you tell us about your experience with that?
No, it was exactly that. It was like your imagination is such a powerful thing. It's the greatest adventure you'll ever have is what you can create in your mind and the stories you can envision in your mind. And if you have the dedication to think about them and then put them down on paper, to me it was like, again, it was pirates or Indians or outer space or a police story. No matter what you could imagine, if you could write it and draw it, and it was effortless. To me, I didn't have to work hard at it. It was just something that seemed like it came through, and I just never wanted to do anything else. And I think that's, I find that with a lot of actors too, that say the same thing.
So can I ask, when you were drawing, or let's say writing, the stories, did it sometimes feel like you were observing the hand making the movement, but it was other than you? And did it feel almost like divine, or I don't know what the right word is, but
yes, and it's hard to explain because it's a nuance of sort of it's like you're watching a movie in your mind and you're drawing it, and sometimes the movie in your mind is much better than what you're drawing, and sometimes they happy accident. So as you're drawing, it takes you to another place, and the story evolves and grows from something you hadn't thought of when you started, and then suddenly you're in it, and it takes you on a path that you have no control over. That sounds it's sort of like you're then riding along with it as opposed to you driving it.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, that's quite amazing. Let's go less philosophical now. Let's go a bit sillier.
Okay.
Would you date April?
Would I date April?
Would you date April? And if so, what would the first date look like? Donc, la question que j'ai demandé, c'est est-ce qu'il aimerait bien avoir un rencard avec Avril? Et le rendez-vous, ça ressemblerait à quoi?
Well, you have to admit that yellow jumpsuit is pretty appealing.
Yeah, stop. Can I just ask, who else had a crush on April? Qui d'autre avait un peu un crush avec Avril? Or just 3 people? Liars! The menteurs. Yeah, I had a crush on April.
No, it's funny. We
I mean, in all fairness, she was the only human really in that. So
yes.
it was
That's
hard
why. No, that was important to us to add her to the story. One, because we always liked strong female characters. Sarah Connor, Ripley. Aliens. And I felt like the Turtles needed a female sister to balance out the brothers. And so April was a great character to add to that family, and also a nice bridge to the real world. That was the evolution of the reporter, so that she could help with the adventures and be part of the family. So.
Who is one of your favorite nemesis for the Turtles?
Krang. I love Krang. But I also like Bebop and Rocksteady. It's fantastic, because when we you start mutating animals like the Turtles, you figure what would be the greatest villains. You want something bigger and badder and scarier than your heroes. So Krang was, he brought in a lot of characters from outer space, but Bebop and Rocksteady as mutants were great to have the Turtles fight against. Pretty very nice.
I had a soft spot for, I can't remember his name, the Fly. The one that, and he becomes like this fly, and he gets electrocuted, and I really felt a lot of sadness for him. Because he had a bit of a tragic, I felt like he had a tragic beginning.
No, but that was, you know, when growing up as a fan of pop culture, all kinds of movies. I remember the original Fly movie with the scientists in the lab, and they just put this bad rubber mask on the Fly. And then they had the Jeff Goldblum movie, The Fly, which was really creepy. But it was a natural to sort of, you pull from all your favorite things you steal from them, and they.
Yeah, the OG Fly was weird. It was just a lot of buzzing noises for quite a long time. Jeff Goldblum kind of saved the day on that one, I think. Obviously, as an artist, you create the work and then you have to let it go, regardless of how you feel about it, especially because you don't know how it's going to be interpreted. But if you could change anything about the Turtles' history, and I don't mean their backstory, I just mean the entire ensemble, if there was a moment that you regretted that you could have changed, what would you have changed, and how do you think that would have manifested itself?
No, it's a very good question, because you don't, the path was very organic in that it was just a series of, you know, without getting into too much detail, it was just a series of, we told one story and it sold, so then we had a story with robots and that sold, and we did issue 3, and I wanted to do a car chase in comics, and nobody does car chases in comics, so we did that. And that sold, and we were like, well, what are our other favorite things? We love Star Wars, so by issue 4, we sent them to outer space so we could steal everything we could from George Lucas. And so each adventure took you to another place that you hadn't thought of before. So it was really not, you know, I look back and I think of what would I change, and in a way nothing, because it was a very natural evolution of the idea that made that story work. And that's what guides you. You want the story to make sense and connect and take everybody else as well as us on an adventure. So it's sort of, you know, yeah, hindsight is 20/20. You look back and you think, oh, but I think I'm pretty happy with what they were.
I think that's a good place to be, right?
Yeah.
To be quite happy with where you're at.
Absolutely.
How much of a say did you have in the movies that came from your creation? And are you happy with the results of the films?
Yes, that's a good question, because, you know, one of the things that Peter and I were lucky about in the early days is because we created it and we self-published it, we owned it. Nothing for the first 20 years was done with the Turtles that we didn't approve of, or part of, have say over. The cartoons came first, and we worked on every single one of those cartoon episodes with the writers. We approved the drawings. We approved every aspect of what it was going to look like in the stories that they were going to tell. And that was even more important to us when it came to the movie, because the movie was such a big challenge, because if it didn't work as a live-action movie, the whole thing that would be over, in my opinion. So making those costumes work, with Jim Henson's Creature Shop to build those costumes to make them work, that was by far our favorite. We worked with Jim Henson and Steve Barron and others. So it was such a fantastic out-of-body experience, where, you know, normally we're in a studio drawing, and then here we are on a movie set with this lighting and guys in rubber suits doing spins and flips and kicks and...
Yeah, it was like you entered your own creation.
You climbed inside your brain and went on this adventure. But no, we were very happy with the early days, of course. After 20 years, I sold my interest, and then Viacom bought it, but then they brought me back into... And I consult more now on them, which is easier. Less pressure.
Less pressure.
Yeah.
How did Cowabunga come about? Because you could have chosen, if you like, any expression, and you went with Cowabunga, and obviously it's a great noise, and it starts with a K sound, which is always good. Cowabunga, you know, it's a good noise. But where did you go? Yeah, that's the one.
It's a great, yeah. It was. I grew up in the country in New England, in a state. It's called Maine. A bit north of New York. And on Saturday mornings they would show, and Saturday afternoons they would show these movies, Annette Furnicello and Frankie Avalon. Beach Blanket, Bingo. They would show these surfer movies, and to me that seemed like an alien planet. So they'd be singing and dancing on the beach, and Cowabunga, hang 10, dude. And what? And so when the turtles were born, because they lived in the sewer and they were teenagers and they lived in New York, they ate pizza, but they had this surfer lingo, so they would say like Cowabunga.
Yeah, they're quite clearly teenagers who need a teacher. Right? That's one of the reasons why, they look up to people all the time. They're very silly.
Yeah.
When it's time for action, they become adults. I mean, as in they're in their prime.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, the names that you gave them, was it to juxtapose their silly life, almost, their silly nature? Because Leonardo, Raphael, they're all like the greatest artists and greatest minds.
Yes.
And then these doofuses that live in sewers eating pizza is a juxtaposition. Is that why you chose those names?
It was actually, the names came from, not only in high school was I a geek that read comic books, and back when I was in high school and they called you a geek, it wasn't like, Big Bang Theory where it's a cool thing. If you were a geek, you sat by yourself over at a table in the lunchroom alone reading your comic books. But I was also a history fan. I loved history, and I loved art history especially, and so I was a huge fan of Leonardo da Vinci, and actually in my graduation year in high school I did a mural at my school of a tribute to Leonardo da Vinci.
You did a mural?
Yeah, when I was like 17.
How big was this mural?
Yeah.
You did a mural just by yourself at 17?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Part of the art program. So when we were trying to come up with names of the turtles, traditional Asian names seemed appropriate because of the history, but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it wasn't silly enough. American names, Doug, Bob, Steve, still not silly enough. So
That's pretty silly. It's pretty silly. Steve,
Doug, Cowabunga, Steve, come on. So I just said, Peter and I were talking, and I just said, what about Renaissance? How about Leonardo and Michelangelo and Raphael? And he was laughing, so we were like, thumbs up. But then we had a discussion for about 2 weeks, because he liked the name Donatello as a sculptor, but I liked Bernini as a sculptor much better, so we went back and forth and finally we ended up with, we stayed with Donatello, but Donatello was almost named Bernini.
Wow, Bernini. I like Donatello. I think you did the right choice. Are there any questions from the audience? Est-ce qu'il y a des questions du public? Et vous pouvez demander la question en français, je peux traduire. Monsieur. Viens plus près et dans le micro, s'il vous plaît.
Hello.
Hello.
How was it to have to work with DC Comics and make Ninja Turtles work with Batman? And what was your favorite villain from Batman that you had to put in your own comics? Thank you.
So it's how to work with DC and Batman thing? As a fan of comics, when I was growing up, my favorite characters were Daredevil and Batman. I love them both because they were kind of very urban, street, use their smarts and skills. And so when we were talking about doing a crossover with DC, I was pitching them another idea, and they said, well, why don't you do Turtles and Batman? And I was like, okay. So we were very lucky that we worked with a writer named James Tinian. He's a fantastic writer, and then Freddie Williams did the artwork on it. But I still remember drawing the very first cover for issue 1 of my co-creation, the Ninja Turtles with Batman on the cover, and it was probably the biggest geek out moment I've ever had, because it was, you just never imagined that would be an opportunity. So I love that series very much. It's fantastic.
If you could choose any other universe to mesh the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with, which universe would it be, and what do you anticipate would happen?
Well, besides, with the bucket list of having a Turtles Batman story, I'd love to do a Turtles Daredevil, because there's so many similarities there. They have a shared origin. even like in Daredevil had a mentor named Stick. We have Splinter. In Daredevil, they had an evil ninja clan called the Hand. We have the Foot. So I figured it would bring both those worlds together, and it would be.
Do you think in creating stories, obviously you're inspired by the things that you've ingested yourself as a kid, but there's the concept of the monomyth, right? Joseph Campbell's monomyth, how we always repeat stories. Often it suggests that it's not accidental. It comes from within us, right? In what ways does the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reflect, if you like, sort of society and the monomyth?
Well, it's all reflective in that. When I think, like, when Peter and I were writing comics that we were publishing in 84, 85, 86, catchphrases, popular themes, things that were kind of hip or cool, you sort of gravitate to that because you're exposed to it, being in that genre. So you incorporate those ideas into those stories. Sometimes they can seem very dated when you look back on them, but that continues to grow as society grows and evolves, and we learn more and we see more, read more, exposed to more. You sort of bring those influences to your comics. When Peter and I started Turtles, I'd never seen a manga. They had not yet arrived. I think they were more popular in Europe before they were popular here in the United States. When I was exposed to manga and anime, that had a huge influence on things that we were doing, storytelling-wise, character development, and those kinds of things. So it's very reflective of the times, also it's been one of my favorite things is working with other writers and artists, because they bring fresh ideas into your characters, which to me is an exciting way to take a character and you think every story's been done and find a new path and a new adventure to tell a new story with your characters. That's exciting for all of us, I hope.
Une autre question? Et après vous, monsieur?
Hi. So I have a question about the Ninja Turtles themselves. I have a question about the Ninja Turtles themselves and the weapons they use, because I've heard a lot of theories about the weapons corresponding to their personalities. For example, Michelangelo being the more chaotic one, having a weapon that takes a lot of thinking power, and Raphael having the most anger, having a weapon that's mainly for defense and all that. Was that on purpose?
Yes, it was. That's a good question. It was, to us it was, but Michelangelo, like you said, I don't know if you've ever tried to use nunchucks. I've never not used them and not hit myself in the head. And so it was like, it seemed like a very silly weapon that would take somebody that would have a good sense of humor to sort of really master it. And then Raphael, who was more anger, so he would have the size, so he would fight being close. And then Leonardo, who's our leader, a samurai, is a very highly skilled warrior, samurai. And so we thought with the blue mask and the swords, that sort of suited him. And then Donatello, where he's more technologically interested and influenced. His weapon is more of a monk weapon, so the bow staff is more of a peaceful weapon, if you will. But so it was very specific to those.
Hi. I have a question about the last Ronin. It's been fascinating to see the birth of the whole new universe within the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles mythos. At first, was it hard to choose which one would be the turtle to be the left alive, and how far are you going to expand this universe in terms of comic books?
Which one was left? How do we choose which one was left alive?
Yeah, was it hard to choose the one who would be the last alive?
Yes. No, great question. And then also when Peter and I actually came up with the idea in 1987, and that was the same year that the cartoon started, so it was pushed away. So 20 years later, we just had never had a chance to do it. And when I was working at IDW, we were coming up with issue 100, we were trying to think of where to go next. And so I pulled out Last Ronin and expanded it and built on it to become what it's become. And to me, there was never any other choice but Michelangelo as the Last Ronin, because not only was he firstborn, first turtle was ever drawn with Michelangelo, and also as a story, he had to go the furthest to have become the avenging angel of death, if you will, to sort of avenge his brothers, avenge his family, and finally settle this thing. He was the least likely to do that, so to me it made a more interesting story to tell of how he became this character. And then the evolution of the series was, while Tom and I built the Last Ronin universe, it was to tell one story, but as we got into drawing and creating within the Last Ronin universe, we decided it would be great to stay there longer. And so that's what we added. It was almost, as we were just finishing up the last couple issues, we decided to put that last page that had 4 new turtles and then carry the story further. So that's what we're doing. I think issue 1 just came out now. So we've got specific plans for this series and then a 3rd one with these new turtles, and I hope you guys like where we take it. It's going to be pretty crazy.
One final question. What moral, if any, would you like the audience to come away from reading or viewing the teenager's life? The two turtles' lives.
It's the approach that we took to telling these stories. It was influenced by a lot of comic books that we were reading at that time. I would say Spider-Man was a big influence, for example, in that he was a teenager. He was in high school. He wanted to be a teenager, but he had these powers. And so when evil sort of reared its ugly head and needed to be dealt with, he would be the one that would be what I think we'd all like to be, which is that hero that would step up and do the right thing. And it's not easy to do, and I doubt sometimes if I would be brave enough to do that. But that's what we wanted to have our characters be, like the heroes we always wanted to be. And even if you don't accomplish it every day, you can always try to be that hero every day. Do the right thing. Treat your friends, your family, your loved ones as you'd like to be treated, and that's the most important thing ever. That's what I would
Is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with?
Man, I'll tell you that it's been far too long since we've been to Paris to a show. We're so excited to be back here with you guys. This is a 40th anniversary tour, so this is our 4th show of the year, and here we are in Paris with you guys. Yeah! Oh, it's my honor, my pleasure. I'm here because you're there, so thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, vous pouvez voir Kevin Eastman là-bas. Il va signer, il va faire des photos. You're going to do signatures and photos.
Yeah, we're going to photos next, and then we're going to right back to the table after that for the rest of the day.
Beautiful. So you can see him over there. Vous pouvez le voir là-bas. Mesdames et messieurs, Kevin Eastman!
Thank you very much.
On va saluer les gens.